On today's episode of Locked On Nationals, I am joined by Stephen Newman from District on Deck. And of course, you can catch him over on Twitter at Stephen_Newman1. And on today's show, we're going to be making our case to extend CJ Abrams. And Nationals fans, would you extend him?
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, I'm your host, Ryan Clary. You can catch me over on Twitter at RyanClary11 and as well as the show page at LO_Nationals for all your latest Nationals news and notes. Make sure to check us out over on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it nowadays. And also, while you're at it, search up Locked On Nationals wherever you get your pods, whether it's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and of course, over on YouTube as well. Again, search Locked On Nationals and hit that subscriber button. So as we said in the intro, we are joined by Stephen Newman. I'm sure Nationals fans know him out there from his work over at District on Deck. You can catch him over on Twitter at Stephen_Newman1. And Stephen, today, we are going to be making our case to extend CJ Abrams. And we also just did, off the record here, we just did talk about how you've been writing about Alex Bregman and the rumors there. So I certainly want to get your thoughts on Alex Bregman rumors. But of course, Stephen, I want to know, how are you today?
I'm doing great, man. Happy to finally be on with you, talk some Nats baseball here. I know we're both passionate Nats fans. Always great to talk some Nats baseball. So glad to be on.
I know, and this has been a long time coming. I mean, we both followed each other over on Twitter for quite some time. We have been through the ups of being Nats fans, and we've also been through the downs here as of late. But I do want to get into this first. The CJ Abrams discussion, I think, is a fascinating one because people are torn about this, Stephen. But today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. But as we were kind of getting into, Stephen, CJ Abrams is just kind of a weird subject right now. Like, I think at this point in time, people are either all in on CJ Abrams or all out. And I don't know about you, but I'm all in on CJ Abrams. And the question today that we're going to be getting into first is make your case as to why you should extend CJ Abrams. My case is really just what he has done. And, you know, we've talked about this. You've tweeted about this. You've written about it over on District on Deck. But some of the weird things about CJ Abrams is that he's not the most consistent player. But still sitting here today, I am willing to trust and put all my eggs in the CJ Abrams basket, and I would extend him today. So what are your kind of thoughts about that? Like, what should Nationals fans expect with CJ Abrams moving forward?
Yeah, so the big thing right now is obviously just given how the season ended for him, given the whole deal of
the gambling,
out at the casino and having his season kind of shut down. The biggest thing is kind of for him to have used that time this offseason leading up to the season just to kind of get his head straight, make the first thing again, and just do the preparation side of things and the off-field, handle that stuff a little better. And then from there, I'd imagine you'll probably start seeing him performing better, definitely more consistently if he can keep that routine going consistently. So some of those ups and downs that you're seeing can kind of level out. And ideally, you start overall, he just starts performing obviously more consistently, but also just better, more so eliminate the craters and keep some of those spikes there as well. But yeah, I would say, assuming that he can kind of get right from that perspective, I'd imagine we'd start seeing him play better, could see a true breakout season here on the horizon this year or in the near future.
And, you know, like, I think that's kind of what fans have been waiting for. And I've always kind of made this analogy or whatever you want to call this, but you think back to Juan Soto, 19, 20 years old, superstar in the making. We saw that from day one. Bryce Harper, 19, 20 years old again, superstar right away. Steven Strasburg, superstar right away. I think with these big-time prospects that the Nationals have had come up, And CJ Abrams is on that list with James Wood and as well as Dylan Cruz now, but CJ Abrams wasn't a superstar right away. And CJ Abrams was a top 10 prospect before that 2022 opening day with the San Diego Padres. And I'm sure you are well aware of this, Stephen, but the Padres, they like to fly their prospects through the system and they like to get them on the big league diamond as soon as possible. That's not how the Nationals do things. And I've always said this, if CJ Abrams was drafted and developed by the Washington Nationals, he probably would have made his debut maybe sometime later in 2022, but honestly, probably in the middle of 2023. Just because of, number one, the COVID season that was struck short. I mean, didn't play at all in 2020. He broke his ankle as well in 2021. CJ Abrams, as far as big league and just his professional career goes, he is still a very young guy. I think at this point, in the first half of the season, CJ Abrams was an all-star. I don't know about you, but I think that is the CJ Abrams that I expect moving forward. I'm not going to go out there and say I expect 30 home runs every season and he's going to have a 900 OPS and he's going to bat over 3. I'm not saying that. But I do think that is the version of CJ that we will see rather than the second half of the season where he had a 600 ops, was not hitting the ball, was not getting on base, and then, of course, was supposedly staying out till 8 a.m. gambling. I'm just not willing to buy that at this point.
Yeah, no, I'd say I agree with that. And it kind of goes back to my point about his kind of preparation. The season started really well for him last year. And then over time, as pitchers started making the adjustment back, I think that's kind of where things got derailed for him. So if he can go back to the lab, see how pitchers are, what pitchers are kind of given to him again, and kind of just round himself out as a hitter in that way. I think that's really where the next step is for him. And to your point, I totally agree. His development was really fast tracked by the Padres, and had the Nationals been able to kind of handle him their own way. I know that Strasburg and Harper, those guys came up really quick. Those guys are just exceptions as prospects.
Yeah.
That you can't really treat that as the rule. You look at other guys, even Trey Turner, for example, they kind of took their time with him. When they first acquired him from the Padres, ironically, they kind of kept him up in AAA longer than people were thinking that maybe, not that they should have, but they were hoping just because they knew what Trey's potential was that he'd get called up, and they took their time with him. And I'd say, especially in the long term, that's worked out great.
Oh, yeah.
Just kind of slowing things down with CJ, and from the fan perspective, just realize to that point, because he came up so quick, there are going to be some rough patches. I think a great example, and it also ties in the COVID aspect, is Luis Garcia. He had a pretty similar history as well, not quite as highly touted a prospect, but some ups and downs along the way his first few years. And as it had been end of 2023, they basically demoted him to the minor leagues too, and brought him back up, and it worked out great for similar reasons, with kind of the behind the scenes attention to detail, practice, work ethic type of thing. And we saw what Garcia was this year. He was one of the best second basemen, honestly, in all of baseball. So kind of add to that, that kind of progression for Abrams. Plus, there's just more raw talent there anyway. I think there's just more that he can do. That kind of makes the sky the limit. And as much as people are down on the Nats player development, which in a lot of cases I think is fair, again, similar situation with Luis Garcia. They handled it. He bounced back great. So I think there's at least reason to believe that Abrams could do the same thing.
Yeah, I think Abrams could certainly bounce back, Steven. At this point, the main question, I like what you said, kind of keep the main thing here. CJ Abrams, I do think that he has some ways to go as far as finding a routine. And I don't want to say that he's immature, but 23-year-old kid, millionaire, shortstop in Major League Baseball. Listen, he's gonna learn. Like, you're not Juan Soto right away where it's like everything just clicks on the field and off the field. Some guys take a little bit longer. As you mentioned, Trey Turner took him a little bit of some time. And at this point, though, like, I have no problems if the Nationals were to go out and extend CJ Abrams. I'd have no issues with that. What do you think about that?
I agree with that. Kind of like we were saying, I think there are a couple caveats to that. Just you need to know that he's got his head in the right place. He's kind of says the right things, just and he responds the right way to the I guess demotion that he got. But aside from that, like we've been talking about, the ceiling's really high. There's reason to believe that he can bounce back. He just needs to kind of put in the work and show it. And as long as he can, I guess, prove to Mike Rizzo and the front office, Davey Martinez, that he's ready to lock in, and you can kind of start to see, even if it's just behind the scenes, that's kind of happening. I see no reason why they couldn't at least explore an extension. They could probably get it relatively cheaply right now too, just because of how last season ended, I think. But I see no reason why that shouldn't be something that they explore, and it'd probably be a good idea, depending on how they want to treat this offseason, I guess, just because, and we'll get into it, there are other items they could be spending on, but that's definitely a route that's plenty fair to go. I don't think it should be something, it should definitely be on the table. I guess I'll put it that way. But yeah, I agree that that would definitely be a worthwhile option.
Yeah, you know what? And there's a lot of worthwhile options that could potentially happen this offseason, Stephen. And I'm sure, as you know, you write about this team, Juan Soto. I've got a PSA for Nationals fans about Juan Soto and what's going to happen. And because there were some headlines over the weekend amongst national circles. So we'll discuss that, Stephen. But before that, I'm going to tell everyone about some of my friends over at Gametime. And of course, I have told you guys all about Gametime. And when I do, I want you to know that Gametime is the pick for your ticketing marketplace across Major League Baseball. And I can tell you guys, not even just Major League Baseball, but you can find super deals with Gametime, whether it's at a Commanders game, a Wizards game, or even a Capitals game. And of course, they have got curated deals that make it easier to find the best price on great seats. Like, again, maybe this weekend, or actually next week, and when the Cowboys come to town against the Commanders, you can check out over at Northwest Stadium and see if there's any obstruction from your seats. Because again, Gametime, they show you the views from your seats right from your phone, and it's the lowest price guaranteed. And there's event cancellation protection and job loss protection as well. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. Now we get back into it with Stephen Newman from District on Deck. You can catch Stephen over on Twitter at Stephen_Newman1. And Stephen, I've got a PSA for all Nats fans out there. Juan Soto. The rumors are going to happen, Nationals fans. I saw this over the last few days. I'm sure everyone did as well. And listen, it's something, but you saw the headline. Mike Rizzo has contacted Scott Boras about Juan Soto. I'm sorry. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. And I don't want to poo-poo anything about Juan Soto, but let's be real. Juan Soto is not going to come back. He just is not. At this point, like, maybe I'm crazy, Stephen, but I need all Nationals fans to know it is a very long shot that the Nationals were to sign Juan Soto this offseason. What do you say about it?
Yeah, I completely co-sign that. Odds are, honestly, he's probably staying in New York. Most likely the Yankees, maybe the Mets get in there. Steve Cohen throws out a paycheck. But the price is just going to be too high. Granted, I again, we'll probably talk about it, but I do expect the Nats to start spending a little money, but that's that's a completely different level of spending money. And I just, as much as Juan loved it in DC, I've heard it all. We saw it when he was here. I just don't really see it as a likely scenario here. I almost think that the better angle to the Nats talking with Scott Boras is some of his other clients, because I think those are probably more likely guys that they could actually come to some sort of agreement with. But as far as Juan Soto goes, I don't really see that materializing.
I don't see it either at this point. Like, of course we're going to talk about it. You're going to write about it. I'll certainly talk about it because, like, you'll hear the rumors. You'll see. I'm sure Juan Soto will take a meeting with us. I'm sure Juan Soto will come and visit. But, like, also, I guarantee you at some point this offseason, you're going to see Bob Nightingale reach out and say, the Tampa Bay Rays have interest in Juan Soto. Like, everyone's going to have interest in Juan Soto. It doesn't matter if you're the Pittsburgh Pirates or the Los Angeles Dodgers. You will have interest in Juan Soto. So I just want that out there. But as you said, there are other Scott Boras clients in this. And the Nationals, they do have a history of signing Scott Boras clients and dealing with Scott Boras as well. And you recently wrote about that with District on Deck with Alex Bregman. I talked about him a lot this last weekend. So, Stephen, what's your interest in signing a third baseman like Alex Bregman?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I don't necessarily feel like third base is one of the team's top needs. In fact, it's probably really low down the list considering they have Brady House in house already. But between, first off, House, he'll probably be a minute before he's ready for the majors anyway. There's potentially even scenarios where you could look to, if you really wanted to get aggressive, to trade a guy like Brady House for a bigger fish, whether it's a Garrett Crochet with the White Sox or whoever it may be, maybe a top flight starting pitcher like that. But that aside, specific to Bregman, I mean, he's just been really consistent. I know there are going to be people that don't love him as an option just based on his ties to the Astros. First coming up when the heat of the trash can banging a scandal there. So I definitely understand why people wouldn't be necessarily in favor of that. But again, consistent hitter, also a really good defender, just won his first Gold Glove this year as well. There's some versatility there. He's even stated recently that he's open to playing second base. Not that that's really a need for the Nats right now either, but there's versatility there. He's consistent, just a reliable guy, seems to be a good leader. He's reached out to, I guess, just based on their connection with LSU, to Dylan Cruz to kind of mentor him a bit. So that would be an interesting added value for him with Cruz specifically, but also just broadly as a leader of a young team. Kind of like that, the Jason Worth type signing that we always talk about, dating back to the early 2010s, 2011, that kind of feel. And I know he's got a little elbow situation going on. I think he'll be fine from that perspective. He's got ties to the area too, which I think is cool. His grandfather was
I saw that.
Yeah, part of the group that I think that brought it over Ted Williams, and then his great grandfather was part of the group that basically relocated the Redskins from Boston to Washington. So that's really cool. From there, obviously, he was at the Commanders game this weekend. So he definitely fit in to this area. He'd fit in with the team as a leader. Again, just a reliable guy overall, some versatility defensively. Maybe not the sexiest signing out there, but definitely I think would be a really, really interesting fit, a really, really good fit on the team.
Yeah, like, listen, I talked about this with Bobby Blanco the other day, actually, and like, of course I'd have interest in Alex Bregman. Like, I mean, I think you stated a great case for it. Like, Alex Bregman, he's been there and done that in the postseason. He will be a leader in this clubhouse. He has connections with Dylan Cruz. He has connections to the area as well. And Bobby was like, well, I think you would welcome Alex Bregman type, but like, what about Nationals fans as a whole? He's like, do you think like people booing him every time he comes back into DC kind of affects that? And I'm like, not really. Jason Worth got the same treatment before he signed in 2011, but I do think this is a different case with Alex Bregman, and it's not even because of that. Like, if the Nationals do go after and potentially sign Alex Bregman, then number one, the biggest question for me is, what are you going to do with Brady House? And then if they're like, well, we're going to keep Brady House and we'll find a way for him to play up in the bigs eventually, then it's like, okay, well, if you think Bregman can move over to second base, then what do you do with Luis Garcia Jr.? When push comes to shove, I think if the Nationals were to sign Alex Bregman, number one, you'd either not see Brady House, or number two, you could potentially see them move off Luis Garcia Jr. And not going to lie, if they do sign Bregman and make one of those decisions, I don't really know which one would be the better one, but like, I would be perfectly fine with it. Like, the Nationals, the first thing is they need power. And number two, they need leadership. I think Bregman can help in both those categories. So I'd be all for signing Alex Bregman, but I do think within the clubhouse and within the organization, I think the question is, at what cost will that be? Because I just don't think you can have Seaver King, Yohandy Morales, Brady House, all in the same system. Because again, like the Nationals, they have built up this farm system. And as we know, over years past, we're having nearly a decade window of winning. You're going to have to trade some of those guys. They all cannot just come up and make the major leagues and you're all just one big happy family. Some guys will get moved off of. Some guys will get traded for some veteran pieces to come in and help this team win. I just wonder who it would be at this point.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. Mike Rizzo does have some history with trades like that too. So it wouldn't shock me if that's a route they go, if they were to sign a guy like Bregman in particular. Yeah, I mean, they have options, and that's kind of a good thing, really, because it means that they can throw out some offers to teams, see what they'll bite at, and just take whatever they feel most comfortable with, as opposed to being locked into any one specific route. Yeah, it's interesting. I would say even throughout this season at the trade deadline, I was kind of wondering, I don't know if pushing for, but wondering if the Nats would entertain, even at that point, possibly trading Luis Garcia, given he's been around a little while. He's arguably at maybe the top end of his potential now. So see what you could get. And that could be something that they explore down the line if they were to sign a guy like Bregman, or it could be a Brady House that they trade away, or any number of guys. But would be really interesting. There'd be a lot of moving pieces there, but it'd definitely give them some possibilities to try and go out and get something bigger.
Yeah, you know what? I think that'll be a very interesting one to watch all off season long. But Stephen, I do want to get a quick conversation about the Nationals and the Learners real quick. Will the Nationals spend money this offseason? We'll tackle that after we tell you guys about our friends over at FanDuel, and get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 on 150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That is FanDuel.com, and never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Now we get back into it for the final stretch with Stephen Newman. You can catch Stephen over on Twitter at Stephen_Newman1 and catch his work over at District on Deck. And the final kind of quick little topic here, Stephen, will the Nationals spend money this offseason?
It's what it sounds like. All the messaging coming out from just various media outlets is that they're looking to spend. Obviously, you don't know that for sure until it happens, and we don't know exactly what kind of money they're looking to spend. But we've definitely seen them tied to some of the higher tier free agents out on the market, whether it be like a Christian Walker, Pete Alonso, Anthony Santander, those kinds of guys. And that means they're going to be spending. So it definitely seems like they're trending that way, and it makes sense given the makeup of the team, kind of the trajectory they're on, where all their top prospects are either like on the team now or very close. It would make sense, again, kind of going back to the Jason Worth analogy. Now seems like it would be a good time to try to spend money on a guy or two, even though, as we know, the last few years that hasn't happened at all. But the books are pretty much open at this point. Patrick Corbin's gone. You've got, I guess, a couple more years of Strasburg. But other than that, they're not really they don't really owe anything to anybody otherwise. And again, there's some good options out there. Sounds like they're willing to spend. We'll see how that goes. Again, I don't think it'll be Juan Soto, but it does seem like there are guys out there that they're definitely interested in. And among at least among people that are plugged in, they're among the front runners for some of those guys. So it does seem like some spending could be on the way.
Yeah, I mean, the time is now for the learners, I think. I mean, I've said this, like I said before the season, I gave him a pass last offseason. I gave him a pass 2 off seasons ago, but I was like, if they don't spend this offseason, then they need to sell the team, pack their bags, because the time is now. There's no more excuses. You've seen James Wood, Dylan Cruz, all the top prospects, and you really just have the talent now where you need not a Joey Gallo type of vet, even though I do think Joey Gallo is a good vet to have in the clubhouse, but like, you need a star. You need a veteran star. You need someone who's going to be here for the next 6-7 seasons throughout James Wood and Dylan Cruz careers, and you need a leader in the clubhouse. And I think that will be just great if they can do it. And if they don't, then, I mean, it's going to be a really bad offseason and potentially a really bad season as well, because they've got some holes to fill. But Stephen, I really appreciate the time today, man. And of course, tell people where they can find your work.
Yeah, so like Ryan said, you can find me writing at District on Deck, obviously on Twitter at Stephen_Newman1. Be writing another piece for them later this week. And I know we also are kind of working on, since we just talked about spending free agency, we're going to all be staff-wide doing a predictions of basically what players we think are going to be signing where, predict some contracts, kind of see where that goes. And down the line, see how right or wrong each of us were. So that should be coming out here later this week as well. But yeah, again, District on Deck, Stephen_Newman1. Always talking Nats there. But yeah, really appreciate Ryan, us finally being able to get on here and talk about the Nats.
I know, it's been so much fun, man. So we'll definitely do this again soon. But again, you heard the people. Or you heard Stephen tell the people, rather, where you can find his work at. So, Stephen, I really appreciate it, man. And we'll definitely talk soon. So that's Stephen Newman. I'm Ryan Clary. Nationals fans, we will catch you on the flip side. Have a good one. Go Nats.